Welcome to Class 1, Part 2, Tonalism, Mystery, Memory, and Imagination. This part is about painting demo showing how to use light and design in your painting. This is a painting that I'm trying desperately to save. It's probably like 10 years old, found in a stack of paintings. And I was going to kind of show some of the ways that I want to alter this painting a little bit. The other thing I want to do is jump to our painting from class 7 of tonalism, mystery, memory, and imagination, part 1, and show you about how we took a wipe away painting and are adding color and detail and information into that. So let me go ahead and jump up to the easel. And I think, as opposed to doing too much work on this one, I will just kind of show you what I'm thinking as I go forward, because it was just kind of a wishy-washy painting that I had done. So initially, these were just great big bushes. This was a vineyard that was very, very overgrown. A winery named Winter Hill had bought it and let me go into their like back country, if you will, and look at their vineyards. And what I was really attracted to initially was there was these bright red plum trees that I took away during our last Thursday together, just because they were so distracting. And then what I realized is that the overgrown vineyards that I thought were really interesting just were that they were overgrown vineyards and did no longer look like vineyards. They just looked like shrubs or weird bushes, and that was not serving my purpose to convey that. So what I've slowly been doing, or piece by piece, is coming in and carving out some forms that's the light between these darks to create kind of a more a little bit more of a structure to it, getting rid of those purple tree or pink trees. But what I would do at this stage in my painting is really thinking, what is the underlying structure that is important to this? For one, I want there to be a road here, which is very, it's kind of been lost, right? I decided to add a hill back here so that these vines have somewhere to grow into and a sense of movement. This was also a straight line back here, so I brought in a little bit of movement there. So this is kind of how I think about paintings, when they're midway and maybe less than successful. So what I would do, and I know I was just suggested not to do, but what I would do is think about this vine growing all the way behind here. So what it does is it has a dark underlying structure. So a lot of times when my paintings are less than successful, what I will do is come back to my darks, because my darks create my shape and my foundation. It's going to be ugly, and that's often what happens in when you're fixing a painting. So this vine comes back here, comes back here, so it's just peeking through. So I'm just trying to create a sense of movement and continuation of form, and I would do that with each one of these probably.
Is that a second row of vines behind that one? Is that?
Can you say that a little bit louder?
No.
So already I like that. Now the shadow forms are connected. If you notice before, they were all kind of broken up. And so I'm binding like objects. I'm binding like values. The other thing I want to do is I want that road in there, right? And I know that I'm going to make the painting uglier before it gets better, but I'm just making notes for myself. I'm just going back to trying to remember what was it that I liked besides the plum trees. They just did not work. And sometimes our grand ideas don't work, and then we have to kind of go back. So I'm trying to find form, movement. I'm going to turn that. And I have a strong sense. So if we go back to that whole idea of light and design, right? Can you guys tell where my light source is?
Low and to the right.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Over here, streaking across. And so what's going to be a lot of fun is when I get these redesigned, then I can come back, and where this light ray is coming across, it's not only hitting the ground, it's also going to hit the side of this vineyard, right? The side of these vines. So I get to, areas where they're in shadow, I can obliterate those a little bit, right? They're not catching as much light. Maybe on the tops, they're catching some of that light, but I have to decide that, and that is up to me. So really what I'm doing at this stage is trying to kind of refigure out, and sometimes I'll overstate it. Again, I'll cover this all with other paint, but it's just like, okay, this hill comes like this. It's got some movement. These vineyards are also going to have a sense of movement. So I'm thinking about this road leads into here. This light's raking across here. I've got to lead your eye. And then I also want you to move throughout the piece, right? I'll probably just kind of put in some notes for myself at this stage and just say, you know what, this works, this doesn't work. I would like to push this. I would like to, maybe build a little more contrast back here to make these trees come forward so that it's not all just soft back here, but a little bit more, a little stronger in composition. I would also like to put a little note to myself that, you know what, this is just this big mass. What if, and I'm curious, I have no idea yet, but what if that tree opened up and had a little bit of light coming through it? Right, so all of a sudden I'm breaking this up, inviting the viewer through a little bit. And again, I don't know if this is going to work, but the great thing is it's wet oil paint on an old dry painting. I can just change my mind, right? Do I like a trail? Do I like a path under this tree? Do I like a big opening? No. Okay.
That it wouldn't have to go all the way to the ground.
I'm sorry, Cheryl, what was that?
It wouldn't have to go all the way to the ground.
Absolutely, yeah.
You could lift that
Like
up just
that
a little
bit of
bit.
Yeah. Kind of like that. Yeah, I can just kind of look and think and try things, and I'll also, that this doesn't need to be a big dark mass. I can bring in some reflected light, and again, just notes for myself at this point, you know what I mean?
That would make sense because you have that light coming through there.
Yeah, there you go, exactly right. And so all of a sudden I just opened up this area again, not well done, but it's just a note for myself. I could really push the shadows on this side. I could push the warm on this side. I could obliterate all these edges and add more atmosphere, fog. There's so many things I can do to this. It was such a delight to find this old painting. I also have two reoccurring shapes, right? They
Yeah,
don't quite work. I can just tell myself, you know what, that's too much. Let's solidify and bind and maybe bring over something here.
Yeah.
yes.
Also, you see this big shape and it leads right into this shape?
Mhm.
That's supposed to be the top of a tree that's right next to this.
Oh.
And now, but it reads as it's connected to this. So I've got two options. Because I don't like it. It's just stacking, right? It's unnecessary tangents. It's doesn't read well. I can get rid of it, which may be my most obvious and easiest answer.
Yeah.
I like it.
Or I can just push it back using values. So it's no longer connected to the darts in the foreground.
And that's good.
Yeah, so they're both options, right? There's no right answer.
Where do you want the focal point to be?
Yeah, good question. Tune in tomorrow where Michael actually makes smart choices and figures out.
Used to be plum trees.
Yeah, it used to be a red band of trees right here. So yeah, this painting's really changing, but I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't love this. I don't, but it has potential. So I don't know. It's it's not a fantastic design. It's weird having the bend in the road so far to the side. What am I going to do that's going to turn here? And what's going to add interest here? I don't know. So anyways, this is how a lot of times, especially working over an old painting, that I can experiment with and just.
Yeah, because part of me, I liked it when you erased that tree and gave me the opportunity to go around the bend.
That road has a sharp bend there, but it wouldn't have to. It could go out through there a little bit.
Yeah, I could bring it all the way
Yeah.
down here.
Just a touch, it would lead your eye.
Right. And that's just, that is the thing, is like a lot of times students, and you guys are so good. You guys, I think, really understand that there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. But what I invite you to do, and Lisa, this goes back to what we were just talking about, is sometimes putting I have no idea what this scene actually looks like. It's been 10 years. I have no photos. So it's, now I'm just free to do things and decide. And again, I can't mess it up more than it already is.
Well, I love the way the shadows have added so much to it, or the shade. Yeah, the dark really made a huge difference.
Hey, Michael,
Yeah.
I'm so confused by the grapevines.
Yeah, me too.
I'm like, is it like a cornfield?
That's
or
what I was
Yeah,
just
that's what I
thinking,
mean.
corn shots.
I really
They
have
were
been a
just
problem.
overgrown. I think they'd been 20 years since they'd been harvested. They were just
It
overgrown.
doesn't matter
big.
what they are, does it?
No,
that?
but I'm confused by it.
Oh.
If that's part of the focal point, like my brain just goes like, well, what is that? And
Right.
so,
And so, yeah, that would be my other note, is like, okay, what do we do? How do we, make them into vineyard shapes? Right? Because vines are generally heavy on top. And then, have their little branches coming down.
yeah, I've been painting a lot of vineyards plein air around here, so I guess
Ah.
that's why I'm confused.
No, me too. And that was like, I think that's the reason this painting never went out into the world, is because I was so excited to find these really old vines, but they didn't look like anything. They just looked like weird.
You know which way they were going when you started, but you could make that vine go lengthwise and put a little highlight in there of old vines. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Not at all, but I never do.
Well, it could go left to right.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay?
yeah, and there's so much. I mean, the odds are that I will just completely paint over this. You know what I mean? But it's kind of fun to see and like, okay, what if, and maybe a couple big dashes of light and color, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, now I have a place in this again. But yeah, the truth is, right now I have not, I don't have a strong idea. But why I kept this on the easel was to just show you guys that, how I would maybe go about, or how I would, approach, just going back to the darks, figuring out my form, my shapes, because everything was so wishy-washy that, I don't think it's worth, I think it'll take me more time to fix this than it would to paint another painting that's going to be a lot better. But there's some things like these striations are so fun, and there's some things in this that are great, but I can also just go, okay, I learned my lesson from this. Thank you, painting. Time to get painted over and put to rest.
I have a paint like that right now on my easel, my French easel that I don't use, and I've looked at it for 6 months, and I'm just like, okay, it's time. Just
It really is. I mean, it's and for those of you writing notes, and you've probably written this 100 times because you've been in my class, but I love painting. I hate fixing. And I can spend 10 times more fixing a painting, and it will never end up as good as a painting that I have a good concept, a good idea, and I've thought of my approach. One of the things in the notes for this class, let me see if I can find it really quickly, that is so important. I'm trying to find it real quick. But it's basically the observe. No, where is it? Sorry, trying to read my notes really quickly. But it's that observe and basically, analyze and then attack. And, in this, I had an idea. The idea didn't work. Now I'm trying to come up with completely different ideas, and they may never really work. So, anyways. I just wanted to share that with you, that it's not always direct. It's not always simple. And our ideas don't always work, and we don't even know until we try it. And a lot of times I will try like in a desperate manner to see if I can come up with a solution. But if I don't, okay, fine. Move on to the next painting. And it is amazing how much, that once you start showing your work in galleries and shows and different things, the number one question you're going to get is, how long did this painting take you? I understand that question in a couple ways. A lot of times it's like, oh, how are you justifying your price? But otherwise, it's also like just trying to figure out, what does that, how long does a painting take? And as we get better, hopefully paintings come about faster, and hopefully we turn out less bad work, and hopefully we have less paintings we're fixing versus painting. But the truth is, a painting takes as long as it takes, and a lot of times the paintings that take the longest are the worst.
Because you beat it to death.
What's that?
Because you beat it to death.
Yeah, you beat it to death, and you just didn't start with a good idea, strong concept. All right. So for those of you who were in the last class, which I think is most everybody besides Lisa and Phyllis, this is kind of my reference. And this is a collage of 3 different images. But what I really, really liked was this odd, almost circular shape with a lean to it. So I was really trying to get this. This was my wipe away. And for Lisa and Phyllis, you can go back and watch. I've shared the video on the Padlet. So you can go back if you care to see how I kind of did the wipe away method to get to this. But what I really like, and I was thinking about is, you know, it's fall, these colors are so interesting. This is from a park near our house. This is from a different park near our house. And this is from an island outside of Portland. That's a farm and open area. But normally this scene was more like this, very full, very busy. And it just felt like just kind of too much dark. So I tried to figure out how to open up that space and also invite that sense of movement with some sort of a trajectory or somewhere of a destination, but while keeping this as the focus. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at an image, you know, look at, oh, what do I like? What don't I like? What could help me to tell more of what I like, right? And these shapes were just pretty ugly to me. They weren't useful. There's kind of a counterbalance to this, but it just didn't seem worthy. It seemed very, you know, dense. I actually like this kind of messiness in here, but once I cleaned it up, I was like, oh, actually, I like that better because all of a sudden the focus is back on these trees. And most importantly, the light hitting this tree. So the light is coming from the right side, stringing across. And I'll have to, you know, figure out something in the foreground to make them relate more because again, 2 different photos and a third photo there in my collage. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to kind of getting a sense of depth and movement. So I'm going to start taking this big, almost, it's, you know, it's basically 3 values. I've got light, I've got some mids, and then I've got my darks, right? So using that, which is almost how I always start my paintings, I'm going to start to think about color. I'm going to start to think about perspective. I'm going to start to think about depth, and I'm hopefully going to continue to remember what it was that I was after in the first place. On our Padlet page, we have that kind of checklist that you guys are more than welcome to use and add to and kind of add your own notes. Like for some of you, you might want to say, where is my horizon line? What is my light source? Right? Very important. Those are the first 2 questions I ask on almost every painting. And it's very important, especially when I'm editing and changing or combining imagery, that I keep those things consistent in the finished image. Otherwise it will feel like a collage, which I don't want. I want it to feel like a real place that people could go to and visit. Also in my paintings, I want to invite you into the space. I want people, I want my clients, my customers, my viewers at my shows, I want them to say, I feel like I could sit there and watch the sunset. I feel like I could walk in. I feel like I could take a journey through the piece. And again, that's going to be different for all of us, but that's just something that's been kind of reoccurring and pretty important to me, is I want people to feel welcome in my paintings.
Hey, Michael, I'm sorry to butt in again here, but you said something and it triggered something. Can you at some point address how you personally find a horizon line when you're plein air painting and also, you know, in a painting like this? There's some very different takes on it out there. and Jane
Can
Hunt
you
and
tell me some of those different takes?
well, Jane Hunt and Michelle Usabelli were teaching us, in France, like, to hold your brush or your pencil or whatever out in front of you, and the horizon line is where your eyes hit that. But that's not necessarily where your actual horizon line is. Does that
So
make
it is, and then you look up or down, and the horizon
Right.
line stays in the same place. So
Yeah,
let me know if what I'm about to say is feeding into what you're thinking. So they are right. So a lot of times when I'm out plein air painting, I will just hold my brush horizontally like this, and it's generally, as a human, going to be right at our eye level. That doesn't mean that I'm going to put it right in front of me, because the horizon line's generally right in front of us. But as artists, we're going to lower and raise that horizon line accordingly. If my painting was all about the sky, I'm going to lower my horizon, right? If my painting is all about the foreground, I'm going to raise my horizon line. If we painted how we see, the horizon line would almost always be smack dab in the middle. So what you're going to do is you're still going to hold that up, and then you're just going to tilt your head or your camera or your focus up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a weird thing. I watched a couple videos about it when I got home because I was like, I don't really understand this. I understand about moving your horizon up and down depending on what the painting's about. I do that all the time. But it was very specific to plein air and, placing your focal point and all this stuff. But I think what I missed from them is the tilting. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think that is something that does get missed for a lot of people, is that yes, now you're still holding it.
Right.
Now I tilt my head, and all of a sudden, and let's all do it. Actually, you guys grab a pencil or grab a pen or grab a paintbrush if you got one, or a long skinny cat. I don't know. Just hold it in front of you. At horizon line, at eye level, looking straight out.
That is totally what I missed. Thank you. I knew you could figure that out for me.
Yeah, so imagine you're standing on the beach, like at water level, not a beach with a strong incline, but you're right at the water level. If you hold this, it'll literally, at your eye level, the horizon line will be right there. Right? So then you go, oh, but this painting is about the waves. Tilt your head down. Keep holding the brush where it is. You don't move the brush. The brush stays.
Thank you. You just solved my 3-month mystery.
Yeah, no, you're the first person that's ever asked me that. That's a good question. Lisa gets today's gold star.
Thanks, Mike.
So I'm literally just thinking about the light coming across. Light is the thing that's going to give us color, right? In shadow, we have much less color unless you have reflected light, but it's still going to be much less. So I'm thinking about this warm, nice light coming across, and I'm going to be creating my fall colors as I bring that across. I'm going to go ahead. Oftentimes I paint from dark to light, but this time I really want to kind of lock in, like, how vibrant are these brights? And so, when I say light, light to dark or dark to light, that is a general guideline, but sometimes you want to go ahead and break that and say, you know what, I'm going to get my lights in my plants, in my trees, and my bushes, so that I understand the source, the light coming across. How strong is it? How colorful do I want these bushes to be? I can make them, as bright as possible. I can make them much more subdued and still create that fall color feeling. So right now it's almost just me testing. Like, is this too much color? Is this too bright? And again, it's going to be independent for each of us. If Lisa was painting this, she would add more color or less color. If you know, any one of us, we would do it differently. But I'm just trying to think, does this work for the image I'm kind of envisioning? My thought as I was designing this by combining my three references, you know, do I want a strong punchy painting? You guys have heard me say, is it a fiesta, a party, or a siesta? You know, a restful, calm painting. And again, that might be different each time I paint this. Do I want these oranges and reds and auburns and golds that I'm putting in here to be really stand out? Or do I want them to just stand out subtly, right? What I can do though, is once I get these warms in, I have the option of all these darks, right? And if I just do dark and light, black basically, and high chroma, I personally wouldn't like that very much. It could work, but what I'm thinking is if I do high chroma warms, what would I do into the shadows if I really want these to be specific and punchy? What could I do in my shadows?
Yeah.
Cool shadows.
Purple.
Cool shadows. All right, Linda and Lisa, 2 gold stars today. Nice job. At least I think that was Linda. But yeah, so I can bring in a contrasting color. Like if I'm doing yellows and oranges, my contrasting color might be blues and purples into my shadows to really make these punchy. If I don't need them to be as punchy, then maybe I just make subdued oranges where I would actually mix my purple and blue with these colors, which is going to gray them down, but there's still going to be a lot more harmony. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let's show a quick example. So I've got these strong yellow, orange, reds here. If I mix a bit of purple, all right, it's a pretty warm purple. So let's go ahead and cool it down by adding a little more blue. And put those side by side. All of a sudden, those reds even get more red. Those yellows will really warm up. Right, so having contrasting colors. My other option as these leaves and trees are beginning to fold in to this darker area is I can actually just take that purple or blue or whatever color, combine it with some of this color, and it will gray down. And become a neutral version of these colors. And I may use a combination of both, a more purple contrast to really punch it, with a lot of the shadows being more neutralized. So Dawn, that painting that you're working on of the trees being hit by the light, this might be something that you want to consider is, you know, do I want a real strong contrast or do I want more of a gradual? Grade down contrast.
I like both.
Yeah, exactly. And they both work, and they both could literally and probably well work within the same piece. There's maybe spaces where I might want to put some purples and cool blues to really push and pull the contrast. And then other areas, maybe over here, Like if I put a strong orange over here, we grab a clean brush, and a strong purple side by side, all of a sudden I have a huge jump, which is going to grab attention, right? He's going to pull me over here, but I actually want you in here. All right, so now let's just take that subtle transition color that we made. And all of a sudden our attention goes back to here. That makes sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Michael,
Yes.
regarding your note about different like highlight, shadows, core shadows, like reflected light, do you have any specific values in mind, like in a scale, or you mix as you go?
So it's going to be independent for every single painting and every area. So
Right.
like here, you know, the tree, this is the backside of the tree. I'm in like a cave in here, right? Down in here. So there's not a huge amount of reflected light. But out here, there may be a lot of reflected light, even in my shadows. So no, I don't. There's unfortunately, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. There's not really a mathematical equation or a way of, you know, thinking about that. It has to be image independent as well as area independent. So
Right.
unfortunately, yeah, there's no like math that I'm aware of, and if there was math, I wouldn't do it because I don't like math. But
I'm just talking about like if you think of like mother color to create for those and just go to different direction from there, or just mix as you go.
something I think about all the time, especially when I'm doing those kind of little quick sketches to kind of stop and things. I'm like, what percentage of light versus mid-tone versus, you know, darks would be the most effective? And there's, you know, so like, do you know the band Weezer?
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, they do
So-
really different styles every time.
Yeah, but the guy is a mathematician. I think he was a mathematician in
Oh,
and he literally figured out, like by going through a bunch of early rock and roll and pop songs, he figured out mathematical equations of like how long should the chorus be, how long should all these different things be, and he was basically able to just make hit after hit after hit. And I imagine that there's a lot of artists that do something similar. Like if I do 70%, you know, or let's just say 60% highlights, bright, big sky, lots of light, and 30%, did I say 60%? 60% bright, 30% midtones, and 10% black. It's going to be very punchy. It's going to really be inviting, because it, you know, it's mostly about the light, but the shadow is there to tell the story and give form. And I've literally, like, after reading about the guy from Weezer and different things, like, oh, is there mathematical equations that we can learn and know? But the truth is, I don't know if I would want to make that if there was. And for two, I've never found it. I've found every image to be independent. Like this is a lot of light, a little bit of dark, and a tiny bit, like the mid values in this are not much. It's mostly light and dark.
So, Michael, this is Bonnie. I've got to leave now. So, will you put the homework, whatever it is,
Oh yeah, homework.
in an email or you'll just say,
Yeah, I will, Bonnie. And your homework is basically to do a painting based on the handout from this
okay,
design.
okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Michael, I have to leave too, so I have a Zoom meeting at 1. Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good week.
And I'll see you next week.
Perfect.
Yeah, too much like mathematics takes away the joy of painting as well, right? Like,
The spontaneity and the observation. Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting thing because I do think about it, like, even when I'm, replicating a scene or out in plein air, I'm like, oh, it's not working. It's not inviting because it's too dark or it's too, washed out. But yeah, I don't know. If you figure it out, let me know, but make it really simple so I can understand it.
Part of me wants to say that's how they used to do those velvet paintings.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, for me, like, when I had a teenage daughter, now she's 20, but, and all her friends and listening to their pop music, and they were just, so in love with it. But for me, I could see the behind the scenes mathematics of it. And it, made me feel like, oh, it's a formula. If you do this and this 13-year-old kids will like this music. And that's fine and wonderful. But I think I personally, I mean, it'd be nice to have that formula, but I don't think I would enjoy doing it.
Well, and the interesting thing that this makes me think about is that just like you're talking about lights and darks and mids, music is based on, there are 3 main chords in every key. And there's like a bass one, like not bass, but anyway, there are 3 chords and they always resolve to each other. So that's fascinating to me because it's exactly like what you're talking about with the painting.
Yeah, and there is such a relationship between music and painting. I mean, we want our busy, we want our, focused area, we want quiet reprieves, we want rhythm, we want balance, all these different things that are so, I mean, there's so many correlations. Like, I watch so many videos about music, even though I don't play music, never have, never will. I watch so many videos about photography. I watch, things about, like quilting and things. And like, I find information in all of that because there is a language, a visual language. There is a language of just how we perceive the world. And I love that. I think that's really interesting. But it's like, how do you take that information and not become overly slavish or, reliant on it? Or, yeah, I don't know. It's like we want to know secrets, but I don't think having formulas is the right answer for true creativity. There's lots of books out there, literally like color formulas and, this and that. And I don't care for those. I don't want to read them, even though they might be useful. So is that kind of interesting how all of a sudden this area is just kind of hopefully coming to, and I know that if I bring in cool blue grays, it's already kind of a coolish color. But if I bring in cool blue grays, that's going to make this warmer. My light in my photo goes up to about here, like it goes kind of yellow to pink to blue. And I'm like, oh, what if I actually lowered it? So if I put more blue, more gray in the sky against that, it'll make that pop even that much more. As above, as below. So I'm kind of constantly thinking, bringing some of that, it doesn't need to be as detailed. That water can have a little bit of movement. I'm gonna go ahead and push this back here by adding some cool bluey, purpley gray. I don't want it bright purple, but I'm just gonna push this area back, cooling it down.
Would you also put that purpley blue or a shade of it in the on the right hand side in the dark and at the like between the like in the mid value?
Probably, yeah, because that's reflected light that's coming down. So there'll be some of these grasses, and I might even add like a ray of light kind of striking across the grasses, I'm not sure. And some light hitting on the edges of the grasses as they meet into the reflection. So yeah, I've got to decide that, and ideally I would have already decided that, but you see that, how it just cooled
Yeah.
down,
That's really pretty.
falls back, so let's do that again, but a little bit darker. All of a sudden, hopefully opens that up, so we got this interesting little negative shape. So hopefully that's just kind of opening this up, making it a little more airy in here. Experiment with maybe a little bit of a hole here. I don't know if that's gonna work or not. Oh, I kind of like it. That kind of hints at this shape again too. Yeah, that's fun. I love, I mean, sky holes are really one of the treats of painting. One of the most fun parts, but you sure can overdo it, and I sure do overdo it.
I really struggle with the sky hole. It looks unnatural most of the time.
Yeah, generally just gonna be as bright. That's a big thing. The littler the sky hole, the less bright it is.
Mhm. I think it's also probably the position as well. Sometimes I put like in the middle of the tree, and yeah, that looks a bit funny.
More sky towards the periphery and less towards the middle, but you can figure out, yeah, like, okay, by doing that, I kind of made it look like there's a trunk all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And underneath is a little more open. Maybe I can just. Yeah, and then you just want irregularity. If there's too many that are just redundant. So maybe I actually even just clear out these trunks and open this up a little bit. Which I'll have to remember, because right now I've got a trunk that's floating above that hillside back there. So I'll just have to make sure that I remember to come back in and, clear this area right here out. How does that look as the negative shapes that the sky holes go through?
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of the holes are same. It's like a different, makes
Yeah.
huge difference.
Are you guys okay if I take another little quick 5-minute break?
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. I'm just gonna leave it recording this time, but we'll see you back in 5 minutes. I'm really drinking water today. So I'm gonna go grab another glass and I'll be back and we'll just keep covering. And what I'll probably do is post trying to cover the whole image is kind of bring in some of the darks and shadows, maybe kind of working in that main kind of arched area and just kind of showing how I would resolve that. And then tomorrow we'll be able to continue to work on that. All right, see you guys in 5 minutes. So 12:13. See you in a second. All right, so just a quick note on the painting I'm working on. If I wanted to work more transparently, like Linda Morgan O'Connor and Gail, what I would have done is in the bright areas of those trees, I would have wiped away more. I would have a lighter area underneath, and then I could come back and glaze. But because I left so much dark, I now have to use opaque paint to come back in and color those areas to add the vibrancy and color that I'm trying to capture in the fall foliage. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, let's get back to painting. Woo. Bright.
It's beautiful, Michael.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
coming along nicely, right? So let's play up this area. I'm gonna try to kind of refine this area, imagining like it's a smaller painting or whatever, just to show you how I would approach that with those contrasting colors to that. So I've got my darks in here and my lights, so it's working already. But let's pretend, or let's just see what happens if I come in some of those. And this would be a great time to have like other colors, maybe over here, like a Payne's gray or a burnt umber. But I'm just using my split primary, 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues, and white. So I'm going to have to make that color. So I can just take some of my blue, because I know I want it to be dark and cool. Can add a little bit of my uh, cadmium red medium. It'll make it a little browner. I know, because my cadmium red medium leans towards orange. I could obviously use my quinacridone red, which is going to lean to purple. I can add a little bit of that, but you see, it's just a nice dark color here. I can add a touch of yellow just to neutralize that, and I can test that in there. So that would work really well under the my darkest shadow areas, right? Where these trees are hitting the ground, or maybe right in some of those high contrast areas in the tree. But I wouldn't want to cover all of this with that, because it's just too strong of a dark and really, really punchy. If I just put like a line of that right where the edge is, right, you can see how punchy that is. It's too strong. It's too much. So I'm gonna go ahead and create kind of a neutral version of that by mixing all my colors. But I'm gonna lean towards my warms a little bit, leaning it towards those oranges to create kind of a transition color. And all of a sudden, hopefully, plus I probably don't want my black darks to be that thick. I like my darks to be thinner, so I'm just gonna clean my brush a little bit. I'm gonna come back and remove some of that paint so that my darks aren't big globs of paint. I like my highlights and my brighter colors to be more dense, thicker. I like my darks to be thinner. And there's a couple reasons for that. If you make really thick, if I just load my brush up and put a big dab of dark on there really thick, it becomes shiny. So if I take that dark color and I thin it down, I can still retain the darkness, but all of a sudden I'm hopefully getting rid of some of that glare that will all of a sudden read the opposite way that I want it to read. Does that make sense? If it's a glare, it's going to read, even though it's a dark, it'll read as a bit of a highlight. I can come back in with these dark colors. I can cut in to some of those highlight areas to reform them, reshape them a little bit. Please feel free to ask questions. I feel like I'm completely dominating this discussion here. So as I'm painting, if you guys have any questions or thoughts.
I have a quick question, Michael. So I can see like you generally approach from dark to light. So today is the other way. Any specific like any use cases like when to approach what benefits or anything?
Yeah. I think I would be more successful even today if I was continuing to go from dark to light, but I wanted to really show you how to use light as a design element. So when we look at this whole picture, you know, it's radiating across, but what I realized already is like I've overdone the light. So if I come back in and neutralize that light, again, the light is the special thing, right? The light is the prima ballerina, that's the diva in this.
Mhm.
But I've overdone it. So now I can come back in
You
and
want that light to be a hot spot, more or less, is what you're saying.
can you repeat that again?
You want the light to be a hot spot.
Yes, exactly. So see how much I have covered here? These trees are being backlit and side lit. So I can think about that and come back in and reform those lights. And that's what's fun. And it, you know, when I say I paint from dark to light, it's definitely not, you know, once I get my darks in, I don't come back in with my darks because I'm constantly modifying. So you see by having less light, how it makes it a little more special. It also helps me to tell the direction a little better.
Mhm.
So I'm constantly painting, adjusting.
Yeah, one thing I found like when I paint sky, like if I start from dark to light, then sometimes like that dark doesn't always translate well when I put the brightest highlight. So I found if I start with like bright light, then slowly translate the gradient into dark, it comes more naturally. I mean, to me, I mean, that's what I found. That's why like, yeah, I always like paint light to dark only for the sky. But yeah, just wondering if there is any other use cases that you find useful from light to dark.
Yeah, no, that's a really good observation for one. And for two, yeah, again, I hopefully am not conveying anything I say as rules. They're all just guidelines. To build up a painting successfully, I found three things that really help. And I'm, again, not the only one that says this, but it's dark to light, big shapes to small shapes, and thinner paint to thicker paint. Really, that's just a great way to build a painting, that there's a logic, there's a system, you know, and you can adjust. But no, there's definitely times where I'm like, okay, well, what is the sky's color, right? Let's figure that out. What's the brightest spot? What is the light source, right? And once I figure that out, then I go, okay, well, that's my brightest bright, you know, and it'd probably be actually over here somewhere because it's raking across. And I know you guys can't see that, um, but a lot of times I will put in my lightest light and my darkest dark, just with the knowledge that now I know everything else has to exist within that, you know, be it within there. Like,
Mhm.
so yeah, lots of times, again, I'm just constantly, people like want there to be this change, like, okay, you've done this, now you're doing that. Like, you know, you've done your design, your composition, you've established your values, now let's start working on detail. But for me, it's never that clear cut of a transition. It's,
Back and forth.
yeah, it's back and forth. And it's also like, sometimes I'm, you know, one brushstroke just went down so well that that's detail. But a lot of time it's just a matter of observing, just looking, you know, what happens if I put down that bright of a highlight in the sky? Does that obliterate everything else? If I want this area to be special, like I said earlier, the sky is too warm. Like I should probably bring down some kind of a, you know, a cooler sky just to create a contrast so that that plays up better.
Michael, I think having been to so many workshops, but not school, different people teach it different ways. And some of them want to put a spot of their lightest light where that would go, and the darkest dark, and then they paint between them.
Yeah.
With acrylics, I paint from the middle out.
Yeah.
And it's just, everybody has their own way to do it, however they feel most comfortable. And sometimes the way the demonstrator is doing it is great, and sometimes it just doesn't jive with how you instinctively do something.
Correct. Yeah, that goes back to that whole know thyself. I mean, literally, you know, you're gonna see me paint multiple ways, and it's just, yeah, what works, what resonates, what speaks to you, what, you know, what helps you move forward. And it's, you know, kind of like what I was saying is like, I'm just writing notes to myself all the time of, you know, this is that's this, you know, this is the darkest, this is the lightest, this is the warmest, this is the coolest, right? The warmest, coolest, highest chroma, lowest chroma. So I'm just constantly just making notes, but like where the division is, as far as like, when do I get to start painting? You know, you're like, okay, you're building, but it never is that fine division. It's, you're always kind of building. You're always kind of establishing. But yeah, when you get to detail and things like the finishing touches, I get that, but there's just there's no division. I talked about in the past about, you remember those old Polaroid pictures that we would take, and they would just slowly evolve and just slowly reveal themselves. That's how a painting feels to me. Is it just, I'm just mucking around,
Sneaking up on it.
need to establish where things exist, their values, their colors, their temperature. And then there's no, and then it's just, they just start to materialize part by part or area by area or whatever it is. So I just don't have that like breakdown of, you know, I do this stage and then I do that stage, because all the stages are kind of interrelated. You're just kind of building and watching it evolve and appear.
It would be a fun to do a time lapse, like take a picture every, like, I don't know, 5 minutes of I bet it would look like a Polaroid developing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and especially if I'm doing a good job work, because generally I'll work the whole painting up kind of together. Because, you know, in landscapes, all colors are
Mhm.
interrelated. You know what I mean? The sky colors are bouncing into the ground or bouncing into the trees, you know, all those things. So there's a lot of times where I'll put a couple brush strokes here and then it's over here, and then realizing that that color relates to the, you know, what's happening over here. And all of a sudden, yeah, it just, and that's also part of, I think, why a lot of my paintings have more harmony than other people, where they really work up an area and then move, work up an area and then move. And again, that's just a different type of a brain. Like there's autistic painters who can literally work from a corner
Mm.
down through the painting. And it's amazing to watch, but yeah, my brain would never do that. For one, everything would be, you know, the dimensions, the size, everything would be off. So I've kind of got to work the whole image at the same time. And again, those darks to lights to is what seems to work the best for me. Yeah, Hassan, I'd be curious to, you know, have a conversation with you, you know, at the end of this 7 weeks, because I know you and I have very different brains. I know that you're much more mathematical and academic than I am, but I still think that we're approaching our paintings in many of the same ways. Cheryl and I talk quite a bit and talk about like when I work with acrylics, you know, actually Cheryl's become kind of one of my teachers because I've never painted with acrylics and I don't know. And painting from the inside out, from the mid values out, actually really works with acrylics for me. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But what I'll do, just like Cheryl said, working from the mid values out. So whenever I paint an acrylic painting, I paint the whole surface a mid value. Then I figure out my darks and my lights, and then I figure out all those in between. So even different mediums have different working approaches.
Yeah.
When I work with gouache, which is very seldom, but I wish I did more, I will oftentimes work with just a toned, like a color, and then work out from there. And I don't know if that's a good way, or I've never studied gouache. I've just done it a couple of times on trips and travels.
Does it work?
Yeah, yeah, it's a
Well, then
lot.
don't worry about it.
Yeah,
Everybody has their own way of approaching things.
but then what's the use of teaching? And you know,
Well, no, but I mean, the teaching, you don't teach to make us do things exactly the way you do them. You teach to make us see what the differences can be.
I love that.
Well, I think the basics are still the same, you know, you have to have your dark shapes, your no tan, and you know, and a strong design. And if you don't have that strong design, it doesn't matter whether you work the middle out or the back in.
That's
It's
true.
not gonna work.
Yeah,
Right.
that is
Yeah, I
my
mean,
this point.
I mean, I'm hoping you guys can remember like how this started with just, you know, basically two values, maybe three. And now I'm just kind of discovering like, oh, this shape, this dark, this, you know, amount of light coming through. And yeah, I mean, it's just so fun. I just love building this up and, you know, and then just like looking over here and like still too much light. Like, let's get
I
not
have
that.
a question about that large tree hole in sky hole in the middle. Don't, it looks like you have trunks underneath there. Or am I not seeing that
I
right?
have one, yeah. I chopped one down.
Oh, okay. Well,
So,
you need
yeah,
to chop another one down or thin it out a little.
what I would do, like, let's just skip ahead to detail because we're already at the end of class. But let's just pretend, because this shape is so interesting. So it feels like it needs a trunk in there,
Yes, that's
not,
better.
not
See,
here.
because that big heavy piece down at the bottom of that shape to the right that's what looks like it was a bunch of other tree trunks there.
It was, yeah, and that's a part of my way of working where I just kind of, does that work? Does that not work? And I still have a bottom of a tree trunk right there, and I don't know if that can work to come up into there.
Well, that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because it looked like you had something at the bottom that should be sticking up, piece of a tree should be sticking up into that sky.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's just part of my editing process. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is you're always kind of just putting notes to yourself. Like I would hope I would realize that I've got a tree that grows right to the top of the mountains in the back. And then I can also just experiment. Like what happens if I get rid of that tree and just make a nice big open sky hole, which also means, again, can you see the trunk there?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay, that's there. Don't need that. Let's just,
right.
and just, it's constantly just going, okay, does that work? Does that work? Would it be more interesting if I had, a couple detailed trunks in there? I don't know.
That kind of
So-
looks more like your reference now.
Acrylic, Cheryl, is I can do that. But you can do that with acrylics too, very easily, actually. 'Cause it'll be in no time. So yeah,
Cover.
make sure we gotta remember to get rid of it here. But I can bring it back if I change my mind. All right, so that is kind of how I'm gonna be working this painting up. I'll probably be working on it tomorrow during class or during our paint together time. Except for I got a bunch of, I got 5 commissions now and a 6th. So I should probably be working on actually making money. Well, let's go ahead and bounce back and talk to each other and just see what you guys thought of this. Oops.
I really like, Mike, how you take the reference and use it. I mean, yeah, make it on your own. I was like very scared for the transition. I used to be like very technical, copy exactly what I see. But I think, yeah, your course helped me to overcome that fear slowly. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, once you're able, and it's not easy and it's not straight away, and I'm still working on it all the time, is going through the image. Is it helping? Is it hurting? Is it helping? Is it hurting? The painting that Linda Morgan O'Connor did at the end of class last time with the moss on the branches, that was such a masterful example of, looking at this really complex scene and editing. And then for me, it's not only editing, it's combining. Like, okay, I like these trees, but I don't like the foreground. I don't like the side things. Okay, so taking different elements is totally fine. And our big goal is to figure out exactly what we were talking about today. Light and design is how we're going to combine multiple references. So you can take, I love these rocks, I love these mountains, I love these colors, I love these trees, I love the sunset here, and make your own. Because as much as nature is gorgeous and amazing, rarely do I walk outside and go, yep, Perfect. Nailed it. Thanks. It usually needs some cleaning up or some rearranging. And I, that we've talked about that in classes in the past too, that whole artistic license. That is what it's for. Your artistic license, which you all have, I've given it to you. It should be in the mail. Is that you can rearrange nature. You can clean up nature. You can, whatever it is that you want to do to help tell the story that you're trying to tell, to
I have this.
feeling and emotion and the poetry. What's that?
I have this little thing. I didn't realize how valuable it was to me until I had ripped it out carelessly. But on the top it says nature, copying nature, designing nature. It was in some art sale catalog. It's
Oh.
probably backwards, but
That's interesting.
yeah,
No,
I
you
thought
see
it
it
was
backwards, we see it forward.
okay, good. But I keep it up on my bulletin board. I mean, that's really important, I think.
That's cool.
Do you think
love
you
that.
could you
I've never
post
seen
that?
I could, yeah, it's such as it is.
Print and put it aside. Yeah, that's a very good
Yeah, I
inspiration.
like that a lot. And
I sent you a video via email, Michael, because I don't know how to upload videos to the Padlet. And it's something that somebody sent me from YouTube, and it's some microphysicist, big brain guy, and he's talking about art, and his favorite painting is Starry, Starry Night by Van Gogh. And he said something to the effect that that is not what Van Gogh saw in the sky.
Of course.
That's what he felt when he looked at the sky, and the job of an artist is to tell me what he felt he saw. And of course, he's much more eloquent with the way he's saying it. And like I said, he's some microphysicist
Neil
guy.
deGrasse Tyson.
Hmm?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, he talks about art a lot. He's really
Yeah,
Yeah, it
and
does.
it's interesting because he is such a big brain looking at something as abstract as art and talking about it. So, but I think it's kind of the essence of what we've been talking about today. It's what are you feeling as an artist when you see it, and how are you translating that or communicating that to your canvas?
Yeah, and that's what I hope this whole class is about. I mean, tonalism, again, I reiterate, I love tonalism, but I don't actually really know what it means because every definition is different. And the truth is, I just want you guys to paint beautiful pictures and challenge yourselves in different ways. And yeah, it's if you came to my class to learn photorealism or journalistic painting, I'm not your guy. I want to share the poetry of it and help you guys to bring out your poetry. And that's the most important thing to me is how can we make people feel? How can we share how we feel? How can we share all those things? And that's fantastic. Thank you, Gail.
Hopefully you can post it.
All right. I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, I know my email's been pinging a lot since I started class here. So anyways, thank you guys very much. Our homework, and I'll send a post about it, is basically to take that email that I sent, that light and design. So last semester, last class, last 7 weeks, we dealt a lot with lighting from behind. I would love for some of you and for myself to challenge ourselves to either face lit, which is quite difficult, or side light, but some variation of that. And then work on cast shadows and design. How does light and shadow affect our design versus just the forms, which was what we were working on before. All right, so we're kind of taking that idea of, remember the 4 values in the landscape, and now we're breaking those and we're dealing with light and shadow, but still thinking design first. All right, Darlene, I see your vigorous nodding.
I
love
have
it.
I do have a question for you, though. I was looking at your handout on colors, and you mentioned manganese blue. And I looked at manganese blue, and there's one that's called manganese blue pastiche and manganese blue phthalo. Is there a difference?
I've never heard of either of them.
I hadn't either. So I
Manganese
didn't
blue hue.
just get a manganese blue.
Well, get a manganese blue hue. If you buy true manganese blue, I'll know that you're very wealthy.
Oh. Yeah, I'll get the hue then. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
Awesome. Any other questions before we take a break for the day? And I'll see many of you tomorrow. So Thursdays, we're still doing the just kind of hang out, paint together, talk about whatever the heck we want to talk about besides politics and religion. Mostly art, hopefully. Any questions for today?
This was super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us tear your painting apart and put it back together. That was a lot of fun. Don, you're good? Any questions at all?
I'm good. I enjoyed today very much.
Thank you so much. And I love seeing all those beautiful paintings behind you there.
They're all from your class.
Well,
Yeah, they are.
nice compliment. All right, you guys, it was wonderful. I mean, this is a really great group. Like, it's almost kind of like if I could choose my dream team of students. Really nice.
Thank you.
I'm excited to work together and play together, experiment together, and try some new things. So yeah, whatever you want to paint this week based on the ideas from this week's handout, big, small, I don't care. Another thing is it would be fun if you guys want to submit some images for an idea of a true paint along, like all of us painting one image. Would be a lot of fun just to really see how, how our own, how do we edit, how do we, whatever it is, do something like that. Maybe as our second to final project. So
Would that be an actual paint along?
No, where we just pick one subject,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
scene for all of us. Yeah.
Because I can't paint in my desk here. I sometimes do, but not very much.
Yeah, something like that. So, again, somewhat on the simpler side. But yeah, and I'll we can look through my images that I've added as well and see if there's anything there that we would all like. But just to have in mind, we got a couple weeks to think about that. Phyllis, how was coming back? It's so nice to see you again. I always love your backdrop. I think you have the best backdrop in Zoom.
It's great to be back, really.
Good. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a fantastic afternoon. If you live in Oregon, stay dry. It's pretty wet and cold out there. And for everywhere else, I hope you get some of our rain soon. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning.
We'll see.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to join tomorrow, but yeah.
I'm sorry, Hassan, I didn't hear that.
I was saying like tomorrow is Halloween, so I might not be able to join tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. For your time, it's the
Oh,
evening.
right.
Yes.
What's your daughter going to dress up like? More importantly, what are you going to dress up like?
I don't know.
Halloween here.
She and one of her friend, they choose the same dress. So yeah, something with wings and bats. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
All right. Well, share a picture with us.
Yeah.
we will do.
All right, you guys take care.
You
Bye.
too.
Thanks.